first time trying the digital stories, so we'll see how this goes. I thought I'd give the journals a rest as I'm starting to run out of topics, and how many times can I compare high school to college again, So I thought I'd try something new. So my most memorable clinical experience of the semester. One Friday, about 5 weeks in to the season, we played Bonnie Eagle. So this is a big rivalry game, as Thornton and Bonnie Eagle have always clashed in the past and kind of been like, whichever team wins is going to states, and whichever team wins that matchup wins states normally. So it's kind of a big deal for them. They've lost in years past to them. They haven't been to the championship for football in a while, and this was kind of like a good first step because they'd blown every other team out. So this was like their first real test. So we get down there, whatever, we're setting up. It's a messy grass field, cold night, so we're not thinking too much about it. We're just there trying to get out of there with as few boys hurt as we could. Turns out that wouldn't be the case, but so kickoff, lineups, all that stuff is done. It's fans chirping each other on either side. It's kind of a cool environment to be in. So first kickoff of the game, a one of our best running backs who's scored some really big touchdowns for us in the past few games was on the kickoff, and Thornton was kicking to Bonnie Eagle. So Bonnie Eagle receives the ball, and as they kick off, they're all running down. You know how it is, and it's just such a high risk for injury and stuff like that. So um, one of our running back comes in. He comes booking down the field, and I'm just watching him. He's moving like a freight train. He is coming to murder somebody. And so he comes down and he hit a kid who was about twice his size. I would say the kid on Thornton was probably about 5'10", 175, and this other guy was probably 6'1", 215. And I heard the crack of him hitting the other guy from the other side, from the sideline. And it was right in front of me, and it was just this absolutely monstrous hit. And then he just takes the guy out and runs and goes and tackles the guy with the ball. And he comes off the field and instantly is doing this. And so me and Tony looked at each other and we just kind of knew that, something was wrong. So first of all, I thought concussion because I heard the noise. I heard that crack. I just saw him running from building up 40 yards of speed just to go hit somebody as hard as he basically could. So that was my first thought, but then, the shoulder became more of a prevalent issue. As he's like, yeah, it really hurts. And so they got new jerseys this year, and they were these really, really tight Adidas uniforms. So we actually couldn't get it off to take a peek at him and get the shoulder pads off until halftime. So we had to wait until then. He was only wearing a t-shirt, so he was freezing cold. So we wrapped him up in one of our coats and stuff, and we tucked some ice up under his pads. Tony did a little palpation underneath the shoulder pads, but he couldn't really get to anything that he needed to. He was just mostly checking how the shoulder integrity was. He couldn't really check anything on the clavicle. So eventually he would, once we got him in at halftime, we got the clearance to cut it off. So we cut the jersey off him, we got the shoulder pads off him, and lo and behold, right here on his collarbone, he had about an inch deformity. And that was one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen. It was a really, really neat experience to see, just like I've seen breaks in the past, but they weren't like obvious deformity like that. That was like something I had never seen before. And Tony was saying he'd only ever seen one that bad once before in his entire career. So it was a cool experience to get to see at clinical. So after that, anyway, the kids started getting really, pale and kind of whatever, but he didn't want to leave. He was standing. He was fine. He was functional. We made sure he wasn't tingling in his fingers. We checked everything, and we were like, this is broken. We slinged him up. We put some ice on it, and we went to the team doc and got some meds so that he could stay the rest of the game if he wanted to. We were like, right as it happened, we tried to send him. He said he wouldn't go. Halftime, when we saw that, we tried to send him. He said he wouldn't go. And then finally it came around to the end, and we were like, oh, all right. So he was hanging out, and it was no big deal at all. We just did everything that they would have done in the emergency room, and he needed a X-ray anyway, so it wouldn't have been that big a deal. So they get the X-ray. Turns out he needs two plates on his collarbone, on top and bottom, and they're going to leave him in until the beginning of next football season because of how bad his fracture was. So as far as clinical experiences go, that was a sad one, I guess, because he missed the rest of football. But for me, that was one of the coolest things I've seen so far at a clinical site.